Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of our town hall. My name is Sophia Chatta, and I'm here with my running mate, John Sandler, and we are Democrats running for Bernards Township Committee. John, how are you?
I'm doing well, Sophia. Good evening, and welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us. I can't believe this is already episode number 8. I feel like we're running a mini-series.
Yes.
We have a pretty great show tonight, or town hall tonight, I should say. We have a special guest we're going to start with. Sarah Suey's here for an update, and then it's just going to be basically Sophia and I talking a little bit about our platform, bringing you guys up to date on some issues we talked about previously, some goings on at the Township Committee, and hopefully there are some questions from some viewers that we can answer. So how is everything going otherwise, Sophia?
Great. And how are you doing? I hope you're getting some more sleep. Baby Ellis is now, how old is she? About a month?
Yeah, baby Ellis turned a month on the 26th. We're getting a little bit of sleep in fits and spurts, but it's all good stuff. How are your kids doing?
Great. Everyone's great and everyone's healthy, so we can't ask for anything else.
That's it. Perfect. So I guess without further ado, let's bring Sarah Suey in.
Welcome, Sarah. I can see that you are, we have the audio.
Yes, I'm going to turn my camera on, but it's a little dark here. And as you might be able to see, I'm over in Hillsborough with actually a little horse farm right next to me, if you see.
Oh, I
over at a farm at an event.
Great.
So,
Look at that.
Since we're
How
on the
appropriate.
topic of horses,
Speaking
I
of
figure we could talk about Lord Sterling Stables a bit.
Perfect.
Absolutely. So as I'm sure many of you know, I guess it was just 2 days ago, County Council Paul DeMarco released a letter indicating that outside counsel had concluded their investigation of the sale of the horses at Lord Sterling Stable by the Parks Commission. Unfortunately, the findings were not great. It turns out that perhaps certain protocols and procedures were not followed, and the sale of the horses sounds like it was done improperly. And so we wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. But I think, sort of importantly to our viewers is going to be, what does this mean for Lord Sterling Stables? What are the next steps going forward? So the folks who this stable is so important to can get an understanding of next steps from here.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me first and foremost, because this gives me an opportunity to connect with more people in the region. And that's what exactly was the objective of this whole exercise of myself asking for the investigation, because I was not the only one that didn't know about it. And in fact, it wasn't the freeholders, it was the Park Commission that's responsible for it. So what a lot of people don't realize is that the freeholders actually do not have the authority or power to make that decision. We don't have a single vote on the Park Commission. It's up to the commissioners who previous freeholders have appointed. So those actual commissioners were also not a part of the voting process, and this was done behind closed doors. As you know, and some of you may not know, but I ran on transparency, and I was committed to that from day one. So by calling for this investigation, it unraveled everything that and so much more. We saw smoke, and it was in fact a fire. So what we end up seeing is that the Park Commission has been hemorrhaging money, about $500,000 for about 10 years now. And when something has been neglected for so long, desperate people do desperate things, and all the horses were sold. They did not use our formal process, which is what the newspaper articles all go into, and that's almost like me selling my car for without doing my homework and going through the a very good process, because everything has a value. And although we do care about the horses, and we have a different approach in that sense too, it's also an asset. So by selling one of our assets and not having any formal vote, it just didn't settle right. So this brings up a few different questions, and we are not done here. This is just the beginning. We're not going to rush into anything. A few people have been asking, will the Lord Stirling stables be turned into apartments or something like that, or will it be developed? The answer is absolutely not. So there's a lot of rumblings on the streets. Please do not buy into that. If you have any questions, speak to your candidates, go directly to the freeholders themselves, the park commission. Focus on the government side of it, because we will be very open and honest with you. I have to thank all the people of Berners Township, Sophia and John. We really appreciate how much time and dedication you've had for this topic. It is a very sensitive point for a gem in Somerset County, and we want to make sure that we handle this properly. So please keep sending in the comments. Feel free to question any areas. I encourage that. Other politicians tried to hide it and put it behind closed doors. That is not what I ran on. That's not what I believe in. And this is the beginning of having the public having a voice in government, to make sure that we're not misspending your dollars, because that's what really it comes down to.
Thank you, Sarah. We really appreciate the fact that you are so transparent in dealing with this issue, and in general. That's what we need in all of our elected officials. So just going back to John's question, what can the people, the friends of the Lord Stirling stables, what's next for them? Do you foresee the stables returning to their glory anytime soon?
So what I would personally like to see, and I can only share my vision as one sole member of the freeholder board. But like I said, I'm only a liaison. I don't actually have a vote. And that's something I want to look into in itself, because an area that we fund where there is no voice or any real authority, that is a bit concerning, right? That in itself. The other area that you're, really asking about are the next steps, and I guess what the future is for the stables too. And I'm just going to recap a few of the recommendations that we've heard from the letter sent in. And that is, one, can we have a community garden in a section? Will it be privatized? And all these things, it's, we're directing all this to the park commission. We're listening, but they know that they are under a microscope right now, and we are not done. The investigation came out, and this is just the beginning of a deeper dive. So I want to make sure that the public knows that we are paying close attention to this. We are working diligently. It was not to the neglect of the freeholder board at all, or the commissioners, because those are the people that did not know, and it was done behind closed doors. This is something that I want to make sure does not transpire again, and we have a procedure that facilitates an open channel of communication and transparency for all of our processes.
Is there any way that the Lord Stirling stable is under the control of the Parks Commission? Is there any way that the freeholders would be able to gain control over it to ensure that this doesn't happen in the future?
There are many different structures, and that's something that has to be discussed with obviously our legal counsel and the freeholder board. So nothing can be done by one person, and we are going to make sure that we look at all options. We don't just rush into something and make any hasty decisions, because we don't want to make this any worse. So, we have asked that they do not take any radical changes, and that includes anything from privatization to, really making any crazy shifts right now. Just because we have to do our homework before we make decisions like this, because I think we've all seen people coming out of the woodworks, because it matters. Things that we do in government matters to your home. What you see when you run past, the park there, the actual facilities themselves, what they reap. We want to make sure that it is open to the community and it is not considered like a private club. I grew up in the Somerset Hills, so I reap great benefits from it. My sister rode, and my father and I, we did father-daughter trail rides. Are great experiences. But many people, even some of my classmates growing up, they had disabled siblings, and they said it was so nice to see my brother and sister just happy for a brief moment and just having a great connection, because this is also part of a rehabilitation process too, and the well-being in many different facets. So we are making sure that that is inclusive throughout the entire county, and we market it properly. Since we are so down with our revenue, we do want to make sure that we get those up and more people use it, because that's what we really supply services for people to use, not to make money.
Great. I know we may have some audience questions. Are there any questions?
So we have a question from Steve Glickman, and the question is, the statement from the freeholder said proper procedures were not followed and that the Park Commission acted improperly, but it didn't state any repercussions to the wrongdoers. Will there be any punishment, and what will be done to prevent things like this from happening again?
So these are county employees, so I cannot speak to their names in particular, or what the repercussions will be, but I will say that I am not taking this lightly, and there is not just going to be an easy pass on my end. So I can only speak for myself, but changes have to be made.
Thank you. I can only speak to something that was a little striking to me, and it was something that was raised to me, was that sort of the letter or the articles ended with the statement, I guess in Mr. DeMarco's letter, that all of these issues were flagged, and then it was sent back to the Park Commission for review and further corrective measures. It seems to me that it's being sent back to the same department or agency that that sort of had the questionable conduct in the first instance, and you're saying that the way the freeholders are going to try and handle this is to really keep a close eye on what the Park Commission is doing here. But that begs the question of what authority do the freeholders have to keep? I mean, you can keep an eye in terms of watching them, but because of the structure that you've explained, doesn't seem to me a whole lot the freeholders can do to make sure that this kind of stuff doesn't happen again.
Yeah, so there are things that we inherited, and those are the areas that we've been looking at from day one. Actually, as soon as I was sworn in, I sat down with the director for about 4 hours, went through everything from the budget to driving around and seeing the sites themselves for all of our parks in Somerset County. And by being very hands-on and attentive to that area, there was not negligence of any sort on the freeholder side. You see something hemorrhaging for about $500,000 for about a decade, and you don't do anything. That's just business as usual, and people turning a blind eye. To me, that's inappropriate, and that's why I think it's healthy to have some change in leadership. But we will continue, and it's really up to the people too. The public has the option you can Oprah documents. If you want to find out more information, there is a procedure. I encourage people. I believe in transparency. So whatever you're looking for, we can make available under, the certain parameters of our legal division.
Thank you, Sarah. That was so enlightening, just to understand what exactly is going on. And we thank you so much for spending the time to talk to us and our viewers and explain thoroughly what has happened with Lord Sterling Stables and what we can look forward to in the future. And now I'd like to pivot, actually.
Well, I think we can say goodbye to Sarah now and thank her for her time.
It is getting dark
enjoy
here,
your event. Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to walk into the event over in a barn, so don't mind me.
Enjoy. Take care, Sarah. Thank you.
Take care.
So many times when I'm talking to people, the first question they have is, well, what exactly does the Township Committee do? And so for some of our viewers who may not know, I think this would be a good time to just kind of give them the rundown, kind of just explain to them what exactly the Township Committee does. As you may or may not know, the Township Committee in Berners Township is comprised of 5 people, and basically it's the governing body of the town. And out of those 5 people, there is a mayor, usually chosen by the party in power. So the terms are usually about 3 years, and this year there are 2 seats available, and this is why John and I are running for those 2 seats.
Absolutely. This is a very, very exciting opportunity. If Sophia and I prevail, and I hope we do, and I'm confident that we will, the Township Committee will be controlled by Democrats, I think, for the first time in Bernard's Township history, which is really, really exciting. But to further Sophia's point, one of the things that's interesting about this form of government is that the mayor is not an independently elected mayor. The mayor is, just another, I shouldn't say just another, but another committee member. So the mayor has the same authority and only gets 1 vote, the same number of votes as everyone else on the Township Committee. And the mayor's job, I think, principally is that differentiates the mayor from the rest of the committee members, is that they run the Township Committee meeting. But beyond that, the mayor cannot and should not take any action without the consent and majority of the Township Committee being behind that person. And that was one of the issues that was raised previously with respect to at least one group that our current mayor got involved with, which was called the Mayor's Alliance, which he apparently joined without the knowledge of the majority of the Township Committee. And I think that there was some concern about that, and that the mayor was acting sort of beyond the scope or beyond his authority as a mayor in this form of government. So as Sophia said, the Township Committee is the governing body. They control the ordinances that make up our everyday life. And Sophia, do you want to talk about what some of those might be?
So a lot of quality of life issues, things like affordable housing, zoning, infrastructure, budget, library, things of that nature. The Township Committee does not control the school budget. That school budget actually, it comprises 65% or probably 90 million of our $140 million budget. 65% of it goes to the schools, and that's why we have our taxes are so high. So that's part of it. But in terms of just quality of life issues, the Township Committee is very involved with that.
Sure, and the Township Committee also, as we've seen, if we've watched Township Committee meetings, they appoint members to the first aid squad and the rescue squad. They approve the paying of bills, so that they control the purse strings of the municipal government, which is really important, because even though the majority of the budget goes to the school board, there's still millions and millions and millions of dollars that are under the complete and total control of the Township Committee, and they decide how those dollars are spent. And that's one of the things Sophia and I have pledged to do as part of our platform, is to really take a long scrutinizing look at the budget and make sure that that our tax dollars are being spent well. Because as Township Committee members, we are, or the Township Committee is, sort of shepherds of the money and the taxes paid by its residents. And any wasteful spending is literally coming out of the pockets of the taxpayers. And so as Township Committee members, I think Sophie and I would sharpen the pencil, so to speak, and any savings that could be found, we would hope would go back into the pockets of the township, of the residents of the town.
Great. So I think we have some more public questions.
Yep.
Would you support term limits and changing the township governance model to allow the residents to elect the mayor? That's a really great question, Rita Considine Zarabara. I would support term limits, and I would personally have no issue changing the township governance model to allow the residents to elect the mayor. I think that's only fair. There should be fresh voices, fresh faces, from just like we elect a president every 4 years and he's only allowed to serve 2 terms. That might be something to look at. And I think that we can definitely elect our mayor. We elect the other members of the Township Committee, so I have no issue with that at all.
So I absolutely support term limits on the local and national level. I think that it's important to have new blood and fresh eyes. That's what allows communities and government to evolve, by having the same people occupy the same seat on the same dais year after year and term after term. You really lose an edge, in my opinion. So I 100% support term limits of township committee members. In terms of an independently elected mayor, I have mixed feelings about it. I see both sides of it. On the one hand, I can understand why people want to have a say in who the mayor of the town is, and I think that that's an important decision that residents might want to have. But the other side of that coin, I also sort of see the value in having a mayor that only casts one vote and has the same power as the rest of the township committee. So, certainly something that can be looked at, and I think that you have to look at both sides of it. We have another question from Elizabeth Grainer. Now that the Township Committee has taken the first steps to establish the Diversity Committee, what next steps do you want to see, and how can you contribute to the committee's success?
That's a great question. I think the first thing is to look far and wide for adequate representation of all groups. I know that we won't be able to necessarily represent all the different groups, but we have to make sure that we are casting a wide net and making people aware and publicizing the fact that this diversity committee exists, so that you can get people to be involved that may not normally be involved in this type of thing or in any area of governing, so that you can have fresh faces and diverse opinions. So I think it's important to advertise it widely. As far as how can we contribute to the committee's success, I think listening to their ideas. They're supposed to present to the Township Committee twice a year, listening to their ideas, trying to implement. That would be the best way to make a successful diversity committee.
I agree. And just to take a quick step back to bring everyone up to date, as many of you know, the initial proposal was for a committee called the Human Relations Advisory Committee, brought forward by a resolution drafted by Committeewoman Joan Harris back in June. There was much hand-wringing. There was not initial support by the majority of the Township Committee to form a committee. However, I think due completely and entirely to strong support from the community, a lot of public comment, showing up to Township Committee meetings, and really letting the Township Committee members, all of them, know how important it is to have a committee devoted to diversity and inclusion throughout the town. I think the Township Committee listened, and they did their jobs, but if it wasn't for the strong support and particularly among young people. I mean, I was at these Township Committee meetings, and a lot of high school and college students came and spoke so passionately about the importance of the creation of this committee that it could not fall on deaf ears. And so I think that what happened Tuesday night in terms of the creation by unanimous vote, by the way, of what is now called the Diversity and Inclusion Committee was a really, really big step in the right direction. And in terms of what we can do to contribute to the committee's success, well, assuming Sophia and I win, and I hope and assume that we will, I think as committee members, you encourage that Diversity and Inclusion Committee to do its job, and you give it every opportunity to come to the Township Committee members, to talk to the full Township Committee, to allow the committee to make suggestions for what the township can do to make really important strides in the areas of diversity and inclusion. And I think that as the governing body, that's one of the things you do. You support important initiatives throughout the township to make sure that they succeed and make sure that they thrive.
Exactly. Okay, I think this is going to be our last question from Jennifer Sperling Kluger. Have you seen the ad being run by the Republican National Congressional Committee on behalf of Tom Kean Jr. against Tom Malinowski? Its message is a blatant, disgusting lie. Malinowski has received death threats. Kean will not say anything about it, and the RNCC will not pull the ad. What are your thoughts? Should Mayor Baldessari speak out against the ad like several other Republican leaders in CD7 have? Thanks. Well, Jen, I think that it is absolutely disgusting, the ad that they're propagating and promulgating against Congressman Malinowski, who's done just an amazing job in his time as congressman, and to try to smear his good name and reputation with a horrible ad really just tells me that Tom Kean Jr. really doesn't have anything to run on other than just smearing Tom Malinowski's good name. I think that it was really wonderful that a lot of other Republican leaders spoke out against this ad and asked it to be pulled. And I would like to see our mayor condemn this ad and ask it to be removed for sure.
I couldn't agree more. It really is a disgusting mischaracterization and outright lie that has been debunked on so many levels and so many times, to the point where the suggestions made in the ad couldn't possibly be true. They're salacious and they're reprehensible, and it wouldn't be difficult for Senator Kaine to distance himself from that ad and to repudiate it. And the fact that he's running on it is really, really unfortunate. And the fact that our mayor has not, repudiated that ad as well, because it is so false and because it is so disgusting, and it's sort of beyond the pale of sort of opposition ads. As candidates, we always struggle with, what we want to say about our opposition, what's too far and what's in bounds, and that is so far out of bounds. And the fact that there hasn't been unanimous support of condemning that ad is really, really disappointing to me. I think we have one more question that will be our final question of the night, and it's from Ellen Lewis. And the question is, are the special ballot boxes in place now? And is that the best way to vote? I hear that maybe voting day of might be better to avoid a red map. I can answer that question. Yes, the ballot boxes are in place in Bernards Township. It's right in the lobby of Town Hall on the ground floor at 1 Collier Lane. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. My understanding is it's monitored by video camera. It's totally secure. The contents and the ballots are emptied once a day by a county official and transported back to the clerk's office or wherever they do the counting. And we think that probably is the best way to vote if you can make it to the box. In terms of voting day of, that's a choice that voters can make. You can have the option of bringing in your completed mail-in ballot and handing it to a poll worker at your polling location, or you can vote in person by provisional ballot. So those are your options.
And if you do put your ballot in the mail, please make sure to get it in the mail sooner rather than later, because the mail service has been experiencing some delays. So that would be the best way to go if you cannot put it in the drop-off box. So I wanted to close the evening with thanking all of our guests, Sarah Sui tonight, and all of our listeners and our audience. Thank you so much for listening, taking the time out to come to and join us at our town hall. I also wanted to let our viewers know that we will be having a meet and greet on October 11th at 11 a.m. at Pleasant Valley Park. And we truly hope that you can join us and we can meet you so that you get to know a little bit more about us. Thank you so much for joining us, and good night.
Thank you very, very much. And just for clarification, it's at Pleasant Valley Park in the pavilion at Pleasant Valley Park. And we hope that as many of you can come that can make it. And we're happy and hoping to meet a lot of you. So thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Good night, Sophia.